Well, hello everybody, and welcome to the Slim Nation's 101s podcast. I'm Slim Overton, of course, and we are here again. I have another special guest, and all my guests are special, but this guy is special. I met him some years back, and when I was on the radio, Chester had introduced me to the radio to do something. I was a novice at it, but we did it, and then I met Clarence Neely, and he was a novice like myself. We'll let him explain how he got on the radio. But this guy is a busy guy. You run into people sometimes that have that personality that they just have to keep moving, and I think that's part of Clarence' personality. Clarence, you know how sharks are. If they don't keep moving, what'll happen?
They don't sleep, they die.
So
Sharks don't sleep.
but
The only
yeah,
animal that doesn't sleep.
yep. They just have to keep moving. But
Keep
anyway,
moving.
welcome, Clarence, and thanks for agreeing to being up here with me for a conversation. I appreciate you. I know you have a busy schedule. But
Thanks for
before we
having
get
me. I
into
appreciate that.
before we get into what you're doing now, let's learn a little bit about Clarence. Clarence is from Camden, New Jersey, right?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Born
And,
and raised. Born and
and
raised.
how similar is Camden, New Jersey, to Portsmouth,
Very
or
similar.
one of the Hampton Roads cities?
Very similar. Probably Portsmouth is probably the closest to Camden, New Jersey as you can get in the seven cities. It's a small population. I think our population is somewhere around like 95,000. In Camden, 60% of the population is on public assistance.
Mm.
It's a very crime-ridden city, unfortunately. And you if you can get out of Camden, get out, like I did.
Get
You
get
know,
out as quick as you can. Yeah, because when I was in school, I ran into a few people that were from Camden or from around the New Jersey area, East Orange and places like that. But so you're in Camden. So what was Clarence like growing up in Camden?
That's a very good question. I was a kid from my father was a state trooper and my mother worked for
Wow.
the IRS. So I came from a two-parent household. I can't cry that I didn't have a father growing up. I didn't, I had a mother and a father. So I came from a
Hmm.
two-parent household. However, I grew up in the inner city. So my parents, they sent me to Catholic school versus going to the public school because they wanted me to get away from the city activity. At least that's
Right.
what they thought. But what they
Right.
did is they actually sent me into the belly of the beast. Because if you know anything about New Jersey, Catholic school in New Jersey, that's where all the mob kids send their kids.
Yeah. Yeah.
So ironically, I go right into the belly of the beast. So I grew up. A lot of my best friends in high school were mobster kids. The Sinellis, the Gambinos, the Castellucci's, Mike
Oh, the big
Lorenzo.
names. The big
Yes,
names.
absolutely. Absolutely. Mike and Vinny Gambino and Donna. Donna graduated with me, Donna Gambino. She was my graduating class. And as you know, their grandfather was Don Carlos
Yeah.
Gambino. So I learned a lot about business from a very early age, growing up in Camden, New Jersey. How I got into music is my father bought me a guitar when I was small, and I traded my guitar for a drum set with another Italian guy named Sal Stellato. And we started a group called Yellow Sunshine. So that's how I got into music, playing drums at like 13 years old. And then I played football in high school as well. So our football team, was like one of the top five in 1975 in Camden Catholic. So I went to Camden Catholic High School, which I'm so glad I did because going to an all-white high school helped me prepare for going into the Coast Guard, which is basically a lily white law enforcement and military organization. So I
Yeah.
had a good opportunity on how to deal with them folks when I got there. You know,
And,
so I was very
and go,
blessed, very fortunate.
and going back to the high school just for a second, because I want to get into the Coast Guard career, which is we'll see where that led you. But you said you went to the Catholic school to get away from the inner city, and it probably
Yes.
served you better, even though you were around those crime family kids, than being in the inner city, because being around those kids probably kept you away from, like you said, you learned business, but you didn't learn, or you would, or did you have the urge to sort of go the crime way?
Now, well, it's hard to grow up in Camden, New Jersey, and not go to crime rate. Okay, now you know they always say preachers' kids and cops' kids are the baddest kids out there.
Yeah.
I grew up in a cop house, so I'm not gonna say I was a bad kid, but I was a mischievous kid.
Yeah.
Okay, I mean, all my friends were in the streets. Me, I was out there hanging out with them white boys, but the thing about it, they're Italian boys, and so the first guy that ever showed me how to shoot a gun was a guy named Mark Sinelli, in the back
Mm,
of the high school, and he had old 38, and that's where we got. So when you see these kids taking guns to high school, them white boys was taking guns to high school back then. So, but they weren't fighting each other though. We're
yeah.
just like just sneaking their dad's gun out the house. So ironically, uh, when I would see when I come home from school, I would get to share some of the information with some of the guys. So when we were younger, and everybody started smoking pot and stuff like that. Well, the kids from Camden High School, the public school, was getting the pot from the kids out in Cherry Hill.
Mm,
They would get that. So I was right there where those dudes was the one selling the pot to the kids, and I never forget my father finding out that I had some pot in my house and inside my album covers. Remember the old album covers?
yeah.
I had my pot inside the album. I was used to have my pot inside the album covers, and my pop literally found that out and liked to whoop my behind back then. And he told me, he said to me, he said, "Look, man, this whole music thing, all this, you're never sober." He said, "When the last time you've been sober?" And when he said that to me, that stuck with me. That
Mm,
stuck with me. And I was like, you know what, Dad, you're right. He said, you got to do something with your life because the music thing ain't just work. It's not working for you. So he took me to the Marine recruiter. And when I went to the Marine recruiter, that Marine recruiter told me, he said, one thing about becoming a Marine, because my dad was in the Marines too. He said, one thing about becoming a Marine, he says, we break you down to nothing. You forget who
mm,
you are. And then we build you back up to be a Marine. I said, no, thank you. Dad, I don't want to do that. That's for sure. So I had got a part-time job working as a lifeguard in Atlantic City, New Jersey. And one day I saw a rescue. We couldn't get out. I always was a good swimmer. Always was a good swimmer. Okay, so I saw the guys do a rescue, and I saw a guy jump out of a helicopter, go down, get the person out of the water. They lifted him up into the helicopter. When I got home that night, I told my dad what happened, and I said, I don't know who that was, but I want to do that. And my
mm,
dad said to me, he said that was probably the Coast Guard, like
yeah.
that. He said that was probably. I said, well, where do we sign up? Where do we go find out about the Coast Guard? And he did his research. He took me to a base that was in Gloucester, New Jersey, and we went to that base, and it was two brothers at the gate, two black brothers at the gate, as gate guard duty. And my dad drove. Now my dad used to take the police car home, so we rolling up in the state trooper car, right?
Mm,
So at the gate, the dude asked, he said, so can I help y'all? He said, yeah, I'm taking my son to the recruiter. The dude peeked down, looked at me, and he shook his head like, nah, you don't want to come in this. You don't want to do this. Like that. And my dad said, well, just tell us where we need to go. So we bypassed that, my dad said, don't listen to that negativity. Don't listen to that negativity. So I sat down, talked to the recruiter, set up the time to take an ASVAB test, went over to Philadelphia where we took the ASVAB test. I passed it and did the physical fitness test, passed it. Lo and behold, here I am on my way to boot camp. And this is where it all started. And
yeah.
after boot camp, guess where I got stationed? Right there in
Here in
good old
Hampton Roads.
Portsmouth, Virginia.
Yeah. And not
Now the
only
Coast
Hampton
Guard
Roads,
base,
but right in Portsmouth.
yeah, the Coast
And,
Guard base when I first got here was on Crawford Street.
mhm. Oh, yeah.
So
Yeah.
one of our first jobs was to move the Coast Guard base from Crawford Street down into Churchland, where it is now. That was one of our first jobs coming in. We're moving into the new base. So I was one of the plank owners of that base there in Portsmouth.
Yeah.
And
And
that's where my
Clarence,
career started.
you answered a question. We in the Coast Guard now, but you answered the question before I got a chance to ask it because I usually ask my guests when I'm trying to figure out who they are and let people know who they are. What influence did you have when you were younger that sort of shaped you into the person you are today? And you said that when you saw that rescue, that was
Yes,
something. It was two
yes,
things. Something your
yes,
dad said to you, because
Yes.
you might have been still pursuing that music,
Right.
and seeing that rescue that time sort of, you know,
Right.
guided you
Right.
towards the Coast Guard.
Right.
So you're in the Coast Guard, and you get stationed here, right here in Portsmouth, which is now Portsmouth is a
This
coast guard.
that's my second home. Portsmouth is my second home.
Yes, it's a Coast Guard city, and explain what that means if a city is designated as a Coast Guard city.
Well, first of all, the Coast Guard right now is the primary law enforcement organization underneath the Department of Homeland Security, and that base there has so many different things going on there. Okay, that base right there in Portsmouth that actually
Mhm,
employs a lot of civilians there in Portsmouth, Virginia. It's a highly secured Department of Homeland Security facility. They
mhm.
have ships there. They have a small boat unit there. They even have a helo pad where they can actually launch helos from that base right there in Portsmouth. And it plays a very significant part in both not just homeland security but anti-terrorism and plus counter narcotics. You'd be surprised at the amount of narcotics that run through Hampton Roads waterways here in this area. So that's the primary thing that the Coast Guard plays. Um, Now, the good part that I was in far as because I did eventually go into counter narcotics, but I was dealing with mainly in Colombia with the cartels and things like that. And then I wound up as a final chapter in my career. I was an instructor at our law enforcement academy as well as our boat forces academy in Yorktown, Virginia. So that's where I wound up. I was a recruiter. I did recruiting for a while in Charlotte, North Carolina, and my career kind of wrapped up in Yorktown, Virginia. So I spent a lot of time in Miami. I spent time in Little Creek, Virginia, working next door to the Navy SEAL unit. The Coast Guard and the Navy SEALs, you'd be surprised how much work they do together and how much training they do together. They're actually next door neighbors in Little Creek.
Yeah, and thanks for giving that information too, because a lot of people don't realize the significance of the Coast Guard and what they do. Especially, I think it's more people have more knowledge of it now. But I remember at one time, you said you were in the Coast Guard,
Yeah,
especially
people looking
guys
at you
from another
crazy.
service branch wouldn't even acknowledge you as part of it. But now the Coast Guard is listed. I guess it's always been that way. As one of the branches of the service, right? It's
Yeah,
always been that
absolutely.
way.
It's one of the branches on the service. It's not under Department of Defense. It only comes under the Department of Defense during wartime. We are under
Right.
Department of Homeland Security right now. It's
So so
remember the Coast Guard is an actual federal law enforcement agency.
right.
Okay, and it's also a military. Matter of fact, Admiral McRaven, who was the admiral for Special Operations Command down in Tampa, Florida, in a speech, in a briefing that he gave, he said the one thing he loved about the Coast Guard is we could toggle between military operations and law enforcement operations in a pair of seconds. And that's actually very true. We could go from, counterterrorism to narcotics or immigrations. We could flip the script in a minute. That's the beauty of the Coast Guard. And I recommend that career to, any young guy. Any young guy. We got a lot of people in the Coast Guard right there from Portsmouth, Virginia. You know.
Yeah, he had a question from one of our viewers here, and this guy's a friend of mine. Grew up in the neighborhood. He's a Army veteran. Name is Louis Gracie, and he has a question for you. Has Neely been in the Coast Guard facility in the Key West? And he said he was impressed with their range of responsibilities. Yeah, this is coming from an Army vet there.
Well, yeah, to answer that question, good question. Yes, I did spend a lot of time in the Key West. I love Key West. We would set up counter narcotics patrols in Key West, working in conjunction with the Navy, and even actually working with the Navy SEAL organization in Key West. As a matter of fact, there's an island off of Key West called Sand Shoal Key, where we would go scuba diving and go lobster hunting. Because you could go right, put your hand in the sand and pull out the lobsters, put them in net, go back on the boats and cook them. That's some of my fond memories of Key West. Yes, yes. So we did do some operations in Key West, Florida.
Yeah, so how many years did you spend in the Coast Guard? Because I want to talk about some of your post Coast Guard
I
activities you had.
Yeah, I did actually 20 years from May 3rd, 1976. My anniversary's coming up to June 1st, 1996. So I did actually, 20 years.
Yeah, and I'll tell this story. We talked about this the other day, and we talked about it before. I'd already met you when we were doing the radio at the same time in different studios.
Yes,
But
yes,
I was
yes.
watching the news one night, and there was a shooting at MacArthur Center. You
Oh
know,
God.
it
Right.
probably was the first time they ever had any kind of activity like that. And next person I saw on the news was you, and it was like you went into action. Now you had
Yeah.
retired from the
Yeah.
Coast Guard, but you had post Coast Guard. You went into some kind of security, or you were licensed to carry, and you went right into full action and probably helped save some people or get
You
some
know,
people out of there safely. Tell us about that experience.
and that's how I got on radio. Of course,
Yeah,
with Carlos Howard. Thank God for Carlos Howard. Love him. He's the one that gave me my opportunity on radio. But I came on radio to talk about safety and security in the workforce after the mass shooting at the Municipal Center in Virginia Beach.
right,
Okay. And so I have a security consulting company called Counter Strike Technologies. That's what it's called now. It's called United Defense Contracting back then. So we did private security contracting. So we basically did government contracts for the government doing.
Even when the president or some Congress people came in, you all were part of that as well, right?
Yes, yeah, we would do yes, absolutely.
Mhm.
A lot of contractors work with Secret Service a lot in different operations. And then, but that night at the mall, I was actually helping a friend of mine get his CBD shop open up, called the CBD shop, which is now on Granby Street. And I happened to be working inside his shop that night on the second floor of MacArthur Center Mall, and I heard the shots fired. And when those shots got fired, I could hear the shell casings dropping on the floor. So I know it was very close because I could hear the shell casings. And
Right,
that's when luckily I had my badge on me. We have retirement badges and stuff like that. So I had my badge on me and I had my weapon, of course. And I ran out, and everybody was in the near vicinity on that second floor. I told everybody to get out the building, get out the building, get out the building. And then when I saw the cop that was by himself, I said to him, I flashed my badge at him. I said, "Look, guy, I got everybody on the second floor coming outside." I said, "You got help on the way?" He said, "Yeah, they'll be here in a minute." I said, "Okay," because he was all by himself,
mhm,
And so later came the SWAT, all those guys came, and I had everybody in on the second floor parking lot, and that's where the news people saw me, and the news guys saw me getting people out of there, and that's how that happened. And luckily, yeah, everybody was safe. I think two people did get shot on the first floor, but nobody got killed during that particular incident. So it was a blessing, really. It was a blessing. It was over 4 shots fired that night. Anything over
yeah,
4 shots is considered a mass shooting.
yeah, and you were where you're supposed to be because you were trained in that
Right.
type of
Yes, I've actually we
incidents, and
yes.
by that one officer being there by himself, I mean, it definitely was a blessing, because that
It
was
was a
something
blessing. It was a blessing.
that was totally new to MacArthur Center.
Yeah, I
Uh,
recommend in this day and time, everybody goes through an active threat course. That's what we call it now.
mhm.
We don't call it active shooting. We call it active threat. So I recommend anybody right now that works in a corporation, works in an office setting, post office, whatever, take some active
Schools,
threat courses so you'll know what to do. I'll leave you with 3 things right now. I'll say 3 things in this interview. You got 3 things you can do in an active threat situation. You can run, you can hide, or you can fight. Those are the
mhm,
3 things we always stress. And as a law enforcement officer or contact officer, first one on the scene, the first thing you want to do is identify the threat and where the threat is. Because if a cop rolls up, he's got to go and identify the threat, whether he's by himself or back up. Because especially if he has to come into a school setting, in a school setting, he's got to go in there. He's got to find that threat right away.
mhm.
Because you got kids in there. You got people, in churches, libraries, So I recommend people, know what to do in case something happens. Now, my wife, I tell her all the time, if you feel uneasy, leave.
Yeah,
Leave. If you feel
yeah. I was
uneasy
going to
on your
ask.
job, leave. Because, women have that discernment.
Yeah,
They know
I was
when
going to
something's
ask
not
you.
right.
I was going to ask you what you're saying. Those three things you can do if you're not a pro like you are, even though you have taken those classes. You just have to know when to use one of those three, especially that last one, taking action. You have
Yeah.
to really
Hmm.
know, especially if people are in danger, and if you had that training. But you have to really know when to best use one of those three things. And I guess the
Oh,
training will teach you
absolutely.
that.
Absolutely. You have to know how to use and when to use. And the object to the game in an active threat situation, first of all, is to remain calm. Identify the threat. Okay, look and see the threat. So when you call on your cell phone, you should have a cell phone with you. You can tell the dispatcher exactly what the shooter has on, and if you can identify the weapon, let the dispatcher know what type of weapon the shooter's using, so the police know exactly how to respond, exactly know what they're looking for. Remember, in a situation like that, everything is chaotic. Okay, everything
Mhm.
is chaotic. So you have to remain calm and you got to be able to use your logic and your common sense to identify certain things, especially the escape routes. If you're in a place of business and you first start working there, learn the escape routes, learn where the
Mhm.
back doors are, all the exits are, learn where you can get the heck out of the building at a moment's notice. That's the first thing you do when you go into an event or building. Know your escape routes. There's something we learned in tactical operations is always leave yourself an out.
Yeah,
Always leave yourself an out, okay? In anything you do. So I apply that in the civilian world now. Always
yeah,
leave yourself an out. So when you and then nowadays when you're in a restaurant with your wife or something like that, you're in there with your wife, look around, look at the exits, look at the people. Look at the people. Make
yeah,
sure everybody's, having a good time and it's very important now to be know your surroundings because you just never know what could pop off at a moment's notice.
yeah. And
You
and
just
and
don't
use
know
those
nowadays.
instincts. Use those instincts that most of us have. Coming up, you when you were younger, you go to parties and say, "I got a feeling something." So you would
Right.
act on that, and sometimes when you didn't act on it, you end up in the middle of it. But
I,
great information, Clarence. I really
I,
appreciate that, and
you're
I want to
welcome. I
move
took
on
one of
to
my
your radio.
grandsons to look.
Go ahead.
Not to interrupt you. I took one of my grandsons to a party one time, and I looked at the party, and the kids was in there. I said, "Oh no, this don't look safe." I said, "You're not going in there." I took him back home. But that was a little funny story right there. But yeah, you got to
Yeah,
know your
yeah.
surroundings.
Even if you're wrong, you live to tell it another day. But you can go
Exactly.
to another party
Exactly.
next time. But before we
Exactly.
move on to what you're doing now, I want to, you hear about all the other branches and their recruitment and things like that. What would you say to some young men if you wanted to encourage them to go to Coast Guard rate? Because not everybody knows. The young men even think that. You know, they automatically think about Marines, Navy, Army, Air Force, or something like that. So, what would you say to a group of young men? And you probably have talked to many already, but what would be your spiel to them and encouraging them to think about going in the Coast Guard?
Well, I still find myself recruiting still to this day. What I would say to a young man, as a matter of fact, one of my TV friend, Gemma Hewlett, who owns the restaurant here, Poolside Cooking, she has a nephew named Frank, and I'm working on him right now to get in the Coast Guard. What I would recommend is go to a Coast Guard recruiter. We have one right in Chesapeake, over there off of Eden Way. Big
Mhm.
sign says Coast Guard Recruiting Office. I recommend any young man go in, at least take the ASVAB. And if you have people in high schools have where you can take the ASVAB in high school. And if you score high, anything over a 50 or a 60, that's kind of high. You can pick and choose what jobs you want to go into. And make sure you're in good physical condition as well. Okay? And make sure your background is clean. Okay,
Mhm.
try your best to keep that background clean. I'm finding that a lot of the people that are in the streets, these young guys are in the streets because we have a little program we work on called Save a Mind. It's a little mentorship program. A lot of these guys have clean backgrounds. They just haven't got caught. So you got to
Yeah,
keep those backgrounds clean. I just got one guy
right.
just went in the army. He scored a 48 on his ASVAB, doing very well. I just talked to him last week, doing very well now. But he came off the street.
Yeah,
So I would recommend that any young person, especially the Coast Guard, is Number one, learn how to swim. Number two, study for your ASVAB before you take it. They have a book out called ASVAB for Dummies, and you could take that or tell your kids to take it so they can get well briefed on, um, what it takes. That you got to be good in math skills and your science skills.
Hmm.
Okay, they're not so much worried about the history and the English. That's something that people pass automatically. But it's the math and the science part that kind of hurts us a lot. But I would recommend them study first and go. I mean, it's a great career. I loved every minute of it. Loved every minute of it. I'd go back
Yes,
again if I could.
yeah. So thanks for that. It seems like a great place to have a career. And we talk about the difference between just having a job and having a career. And it's
Yes,
more important to have a career because that's something that you can just take with you, do 20 years, and, still support yourself. And
right,
as you pursue other
exactly.
things and still be a young man, coming
That's
out
right.
after
I
20,
was
25
38 when I
years,
retired.
even 30. Yeah. So, so let's get you talked about that incident sort of brought you into the radio. Carlos saw you, identified, and say, "Did you go on his show?" And then he said, "Come on and be my co-host or fill in for me," or happenstance. What happened there? How'd that happen?
It was kind of interesting because I came on the show again right after the mass shooting in Virginia Beach, and we were discussing safety and security in the workplace. And I wish I could find that audio. Maybe we got that audio somewhere. And a couple people called in, and I was explaining to them what to do. The three things I just explained to your audience there and you, and then we went deep into that. And then about 2 weeks later, he called me and he says, "Hey man, can you fill in for me?" And I'm like, "Fill in for you where?" He says, "At the radio station." And I was like, "You want me to fill in?" Now, the only thing I knew about radio from being in the entertainment business, and that's buying radio advertisements. So I was
Yeah,
always on the other side of radio, not behind the mic. But he says, "I think you do all right. Don't worry about it." So when I got there, I didn't have him there. He was in the hospital. So Bishop Johnson, shout out to Edward Johnson, was there to show
yeah,
me how to work the boards.
yeah.
And from working the boards, our brother Don Eason, the legendary Don Eason, is
Legendary.
the one
Yeah,
that kind of showed me, taught me some radio announcement tricks, how to move between the different computers, how to use SAMs. You remember SAMs when you
yeah.
were on? You remember SAMs, how to work SAMs. And so it's 6 years later, here I am. Going on 6 years now in radio. June will be 6 years.
Wow, it's been that long. Yeah,
That
and
long.
then
So I met you
and
six years ago.
you are the primary host now, and I know that you
I
have
am
that.
I'm the primary host now. I have three other co-hosts. As you know, Mayor Kenny Wright
Yeah,
is our host on Wednesdays. I've got Jessica Williams, who's with me Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. I've got Ty McCoy, who's with me on Mondays. She was on this morning. We were on this morning. I've got Lafita, we call her Fee. She's there with me on Friday. So we got a new team there. We call it the Christian Breakfast Club, the Gospel Breakfast Club.
yeah,
You
and
know,
mention that's on WPCE on
yes,
AM, and
WPCE,
now you have FM
95.3
and
FM.
yes, and FM as well. So you're reaching a lot of people. So
Yeah,
yeah,
about
and
$1,400 AM.
it's so gratifying to be able to bring people up there and talk about issues and share the information and as a host you end up learning some things yourself
Oh,
and
absolutely.
being able to throw your
Absolutely.
opinions in so it's a very gratifying thing to do. But then you sort of branched off. I don't know if you were doing some of these other things like the food side cafe
Well,
cooking
well,
show.
poolside cooking came after radio. So I've been on poolside cooking going on 5 years. May will be 5 years.
So
Uh,
explain exactly what that is.
okay, poolside cooking is a TV show based here in Virginia Beach. We're actually sitting in the studio right now, which is the
Hmm.
studio in Cathay. It's going on 5 years old. June will be 5 years. It started by a lady by the name of Gemma Hewlett. A lot of people know her in the area. She's right here for Virginia Beach, and now she opened up a cafe called Poolside Cooking Cafe. And at first, I wasn't going. I casted. I helped her cast for the host. And one of the hosts, Crystal Marie, our first host, she kept it going for 13 episodes. And my guy Dave, one of my security guys, it was funny. He was a white guy, and he said he was this crazy kind of white guy with a nice personality. And I said,
Hmm.
look, man, you want to do this? He said, yeah, give it a try. He shot one episode. He said, oh my God, I can't do this no more. So I stepped in. I stepped in as the host and then been there, ever since. And the way we go into television. And that led me into films. I
Yeah.
actually shot a film as a spinoff of Full Cycle. And the name of the film is called Let's Eat, which is on Tubi right now.
Well, okay.
Yeah, so it's been fun.
Like I
It's
said,
been
you
fun.
learned something. I didn't know that. So
Yeah,
I'm gonna have
man.
to go.
And so my company is a marketing consulting company with different business silos, different verticals. So security is one of those verticals, but the other verticals is Wet Life Adventures, which is a water sports company where we rent yachts and jet skis and things like that in the summertime. And that's actually how I met Gemma Hewlett. She rented a yacht from us one summer, and ever since then we've been friends ever since. And of course, our security side of things is now we're more technical as it relates to security, cyber security, and also drone surveillance and things like that. And that's called Counter Strike. That's another one of our verticals right now under the Coastal Concepts Agency.
Wow. I knew you were really deeply involved, but I just have to admire you because it's just like the fellow you just mentioned. He did it one day and said, "I can't do this." People don't realize there's a lot involved in doing it.
Oh
Just
yeah,
doing the
TV. Oh
radio,
yeah,
just
TV is
doing
no
the
joke.
radio.
But
Yeah,
radio actually radio is a little bit harder because
yeah,
radio you can't back up from a mistake. Once
yeah.
you say the wrong thing, you
Live.
got to live
Yeah,
with it.
yes, yes, indeed. And
You understand what I mean,
that's
Slim? You got to live with it. Well, on radio, you
yeah,
got to live with it. At least on TV, the director can say cut, stop,
cut.
cut. He
Let's
can
do
do
that
all that
again.
stuff. But radio, I can't do that.
Yeah, if
You
you're in
know?
radio, you might have guest schedules and they don't show up, and then you have to figure out. You have to sort of. You can't
Right.
have
There
dead
you
air.
go.
Can't have
That
dead air
part.
on the radio. So you have to be, and
That
that's
part.
why it's important if you're on the radio to pay attention to what's going on around you because
Yeah, that
you
part.
have to be able to sort of pick up on multiple conversations with your guests. Just knowing a
Yeah.
little bit about what they're talking about can help you be an effective interviewer or conversationist on the radio. So yeah,
Yeah.
you're right. It might be a little harder, but
Yeah, and my
uh,
communication skills help me a lot, both with radio and TV.
yeah,
Because actually, as a journalist now, you have to understand different aspects of society. So when you have an interview, you can kind of look like you're part of the whole conversation and not just asking questions.
right,
You know
right,
what I mean? Like when I had Senator Louise Lucas, I had her on for a whole month and a half, and I had Lionel Sproul on for a month and a half. So I
yeah,
had her on Mondays and Lionel on Fridays. Imagine what I learned then about
yeah.
politics.
From both sides of
Imagine.
the spectrum.
You
And,
know,
and and also, Clarence, you have to sort of, know when it's time to inject your opinions and when it's time to just, be sort of open to, other people. You might have somebody up there you completely disagree with, but
right,
you can't not have them up there because you disagree with them because the conversation is important because sometimes it helps you understand why that person feels that way. You might still disagree with them, but at least
right.
you understand why they voted a certain way. This is with public officials or elected officials, why they vote a certain way or why they move in a certain way. You won't know that unless you have a conversation with them, and you can't have a conversation unless you're open to what they're saying, even though you have an opinion of your own. And you just have to know when to inject that your opinion,
Right,
when it makes sense and when it doesn't.
right. Yeah, and I tell people all the time, especially people who want to get into media business, is that you know, especially radio. Radio is an opportunity to learn so much, and it makes so many relationships. So since then, I've built so many relationships in radio, and television as well.
Yeah,
And but the good part about that is that we have a microphone. And
yeah,
Carlos Howard used to always say that to me. He said, "Man, now you're the one with the microphone. So when
right.
there's an issue in a community or something like that, we have a microphone. We can put it out there. As a matter of fact, I just talked to Georgia Allen today from the NAACP here in Virginia Beach, and we've got something we're doing in the city of Virginia Beach tomorrow about the 10-1 system. The city is still trying to fight that voting system that was actually won in court by Georgia Allen and Latasha Holloway.
Hmm.
So I'm going to have her on radio soon. You might want to get her on your show
Yeah,
to talk about that issue and try to continue to sway the voters that we continue with the 10-1 system. That's how we're able to get four blacks on the city council in Virginia Beach.
yeah. And I
You know,
always say it's the competition is good, but I always tell some of my guests, especially if I have local authors on that are trying to push a book or something like that, I try to encourage them to you know, come by and talk to me first, but go to all the other different outlets you can go to. Don't mind spreading the wealth and giving them the opportunity to open up, especially if they're local. It's a little harder to sell those books on a national level. So you have to go to different platforms and make sure you sell it. So I have no
right.
problem sending people to you or saying you might want to
I,
interview this person, just to give that person the maximum exposure
yeah.
that they deserve. We
That's
all
vice
here to
versa.
share
And vice
information.
versa.
Yeah. Yeah. And
I
you
would
do
love to
that.
send
You do
people to
that
your
as well.
show as well.
Yeah. And that's why I wanted to have you on there because I've been thinking about it for a while. And when I met you, like I said in the beginning, I was very impressed. And then the more I got to know you, the more I said, look, if I could do all that
Oh man, I appreciate
in,
that,
in a
Slim.
month,
That means
what
so
he
much.
does in a week. But I know it's just like second nature for you. And some people just have that ability to multitask and have a lot of things going on at once. And would you say that that was in you in the beginning, or did the Coast Guard or being a part of an organization like that sort of helped you
Oh,
be as
absolutely,
organized as you are?
absolutely, 100%. I always contribute my Coast Guard career to my corporate career.
Hmm.
And my show is 6 o'clock in the morning. You
Yeah.
know, that's 6 o'clock is late to me. You know,
Oh,
I'm up at 4 o'clock anyway.
yeah.
So that just comes from my Coast Guard career. We were always up early, and I always stood to 4 to 8 watches anyway.
Yeah.
That's four
I
in the
used to have,
morning to 8 at night. I mean 8 in the morning. I
I
always
had a
stood those watches anyway.
I had a friend that was in the Navy, and when he would come home and visit, he would come to my house about 8 o'clock in the morning. And I said, man, who comes to visit somebody at 8 o'clock in the morning? And one of my other friends who was the Army vet said, you have to understand, 8 o'clock is like noon to him. He's been
Oh,
up. He's been up
oh yeah,
since 4. So, when
yeah,
he visits at 8, to
right,
him, being around his military friends, that's just like, that's not early. That's actually late. So
right,
I had to understand that and understand why he visited so early because, sometimes I wouldn't even go to the door. I said, man, wait a minute, who comes
You're right.
on a
You're right.
social visit?
8 o'clock is late. Like like
Yeah,
like right now, right now it's 1:30 something, and my day is just about finished. My work day is finished because I got a lot of stuff done early this morning.
yeah. Repeat that. Alexis was over here talking to me.
Oh no, I said that. It's like 1:30 right now. I said my work day just about over.
Yeah, and one
You
thirty,
know,
and most people are just beginning.
they
Yeah,
just start. They just coming off their lunch break. You
yeah.
know.
Well, Clarence, look, I appreciate you coming on. I
Oh
appreciate you
man,
agreeing to come on, and I hope we can do this again. And we said another time we'll probably talk some politics. Uh, you
I
your
love talking about
politics is,
politics.
huh?
I
Yeah,
love talking about
yeah,
politics.
because your politics is different from most, but the same as most.
Yeah.
That's the only way I can describe it.
I, I,
You consider yourself, you're a Republican, right?
no sir.
Registered.
No sir.
Oh, you're not
I'm glad you
independent.
asked that question. I'm not. A lot of people think I am.
A lot of people think you're right.
Yeah, I'm a black conservative, but I'm not a Republican. I would not
Okay.
assume, and I'm not a Democrat. I'm what I call a solutionist, and I was given that term by K. James, the former Secretary of the Commonwealth.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
and a solutionist basically we look at the solutions. We don't vote party. We vote leader. We vote leader. And right now, we need political warriors. We don't need preachers. We don't need regular politicians. We need warriors like Aaron Rouse, like Mike Figgins. Those to me are warriors, political warriors
Yeah,
that go in and really fight. Those guys really fight. Like Louise Lucas. Louise Lucas
yeah,
is a political warrior. You know what I mean?
yeah,
So I don't align myself with any party. Now I make that very clear on my Facebook page, on radio. A lot of people thought I was Republican because I did vote for Donald Trump the first time. The
yeah,
second time I didn't vote for him, and this time I didn't vote for him. And thank
yeah,
God I didn't. And as you can see, we needed more votes for Kamala Harris, and we just
yeah,
didn't get him this time. But that's okay. We only
yeah,
got look. I'm counting the days down. We only got 3 years and maybe 8 months to go with him.
yeah.
You know.
And that's why I wanted to make that clear. That's why I was saying, Penn, a lot of people, because of that first vote, and they automatically gonna build that into you. And
Right.
being a black conservative is a little different from that,
I'm not
from
like
being a
most black
Republican or a
conservatives.
Democrat.
Right. Yeah, I'm not like most black conservatives.
Yeah, but some people heard that conservative, and
Yeah.
if you really ask a lot of people, clients, and define what conservatism is, a lot of people are
I,
falling in there. A lot of black
I'll
people are
say it like
falling into
this.
that. Mhm.
This is what conservative means, okay? As a black conservative, family. Oh, let me back up. God, family, work. God, family, work. Okay. I emphasize God because as a conservative, we put God first in everything that we do.
Yeah,
Family, because family is very important. I come from like I said, a two parent household. I think I turned out pretty good. Now, unfortunately, my social life wasn't as good as my parents were because I've been married 3 times. This is my third wife, but I get along perfectly good with both my former wives. They're still family to me. We get along well. But I'm all about, I don't like abortion. I'm totally against abortion. Now you can dress it up any way you want to, reproductive rights, anything like that. I am totally against abortion. You know, and those are some of the things that align me more in the conservative realm. Now,
right.
what Donald Trump is doing is totally unacceptable.
Mhm.
And more black Republicans and more white Republicans need to speak up on what he's doing. I speak up against what Donald Trump is doing. Okay, and Elon Musk and JD Vance and all the guys. Getting rid of some of the black initiatives, that's totally uncalled for. More black Republicans need to be speaking up on that. But
Yeah.
they're afraid. They're afraid. I don't know
How
what
can
the
he?
hell they're afraid of.
Yeah, how can he have so much power over, just one man? He's just one man, and I don't know
Just
what
one
it
man.
is, but yeah,
Just one
and
man.
and
That's
that,
why I say we need
and
political warriors.
yeah, yeah,
We
indeed,
need more Jasmine Crockett's. We need more AOC's. But we need men like that.
yeah.
Hakeem Jeffries is cool, but he's just not strong enough. We need people like Wes Moore, Governor Wes Moore, Maryland.
Oh
You know,
yeah,
so
he's
you,
great.
right. More people like William Steele, the former
Yeah,
head of the Republican Party.
right,
He
right.
was the former head of the Republican Party, and he's speaking up. He's like the only black conservative I've noticed speaking up right now.
Yeah, he's been speaking up for a long time now.
He
Yeah,
has. He really
yeah,
has. I never forget when Barack Obama was running, and he stood up for Barack Obama, but he also stood up for Minister Farrakhan as well. I'll never forget that about him.
yeah,
I'll
yeah,
never forget that about him. So I have a lot
yeah.
of respect for Bill Steele. I do have a lot of
Yeah,
respect for him.
he was black first, and that's what some people have to realize. When the issues
Absolutely.
like that come up, you have to realize you were black first,
Yes,
and
sir.
that should be. So before we go,
Yes, sir.
Clarence, I have to mention this too. I forgot to mention this. WPCE is pretty much a religious station, and when I remember the interactions you and Carlos used to have. Carlos was a scholar of the Bible. I mean, he knew it back and forth, and I was always impressed by you. When we were growing up, we were taught
Oh
not to
God,
question certain things.
that's
I
the
mean,
worst thing ever
and
happened to black people.
yeah, worst thing because we all had, how did somebody live in the mouth of a whale? So we had those questions, but we were told do not question it. The word is the word, and that's it. But what I enjoyed about watching you and Carlos, and Carlos was, sometimes he would get pretty strong in his teachings there, but you would ask those questions that a lot of people probably wanted to ask anyway. So I want to know. I know your faith was strong when you got there. Did it get stronger by understanding the Bible more through reading it more yourself and listening to Carlos' interpretation of it? Because I noticed something, as time went on from when you first came on, you had the faith, but then I saw it sort of grow stronger because of the position you have. Did I see that right?
You said that correctly. Carlos gave me a wonderful opportunity. He saw something in me that I didn't see in myself.
Mm,
And as I came on the radio, God allowed me to understand who I was and my mission, my ministry. My ministry is media. That's my ministry. And
right.
yes, it did get me a lot closer to the Bible, the Quran, the Torah. I read all three books. I only
Yeah,
read
because
two,
you
the
were
Bible and the Quran, in the morning.
once
And
you Muslim at one time.
yes, I still am.
Oh, okay,
But
okay,
I am also Christian. I'm also
right.
Jewish. I'm also Buddhist. I'm also Hindu. I call
And you can
myself a universalist.
you can be all
Okay?
of that.
Yes, I look at religion the way God looks at religion. There's 4,200 different religions in the world. Okay? We all got our own truth. So everybody got their own truth. You could talk to, in Islam, there's over 300 different sects of Islam. So each one of those sects got their own truth. When you look at Christianity, you've got thousands of different, you got Church of God in Christ, you got Church of God up and down Christ, you got Church of God in Christ, you got Baptist, you got Methodist, you got AME, you got all of this stuff. So it's everybody's truth. Jewish, you've got so many different types of Jewish faith. But one main thing about the Jews is that they got the power. So if we
Mhm.
do anything, we should be studying the Jews right now, not looking at them as an enemy, but studying. Okay, studying the Jews. I have a lot of Jewish friends that teach me a lot of things, especially in the financial world. So right now, at this stage of the game, we should be studying them and how they operate and how they're united. The beautiful
Yeah.
part of me and you right now, Slim, is that we're in control of media. We have media right now. That is how the Jewish organizations. That's how they gained power first, was through media, and then through
Right.
banking. So we're in a very good position right now. We're in a very, very good position. Even though Donald Trump's in office, but we're in a good position. We just got to know how to take advantage of it, and use more logic than emotions.
Right. Yes, indeed. And before you go, I had one more question from viewer, and the guy I told you, Lewis Bracy, who is an Army vet, he has another question for you before we go. And
What's
I don't
up?
know if you can you see it. It says, "Please ask Neely how would he stop drugs from coming into America?" Oh, so I guess you have to be the drug czar for one thing, and
Well, first of all, you have to stop the demand for drugs. We have to build more rehabilitation facilities in each city, especially in inner cities. Okay, and as a drug enforcement officer, these are some of the things I identified right in operations, because it's a billion-dollar industry, billions.
a lot of
Okay,
money.
so it's not so much of how do we stop it. The Coast Guard only stops 13% of it coming into the United States. Okay, so that's a very small percentage. What we have to stop is the demand for it. If we could get our people in rehabilitation centers, if we could get our people really understand the power of themselves and how they can control their desires, then we could stop drugs. But right now, as long as there's a desire, there's an old saying in DEA. DEA say if somebody's dumb enough to do drugs, somebody got to be smart enough to sell it to them. That's an
Yeah,
old saying. So they
yeah,
created the trap. They created what they call a trap. So these kids call it the trap house, the trap this, the trap that. It's really a trap. And that
yeah.
term trap came from a DEA agent.
Supply and demand. Yes,
Actually,
indeed.
a DEA agent that I know and actually has worked with before. Came
Yep,
from a Spanish guy. He's a DEA agent, and he came up with the term trap.
yep.
Isn't that
Thanks,
crazy?
Louis, for that question. That's a good question, but it's something that, like Clarence said, it's you have to deal with the demand, and as
Yeah,
long as
very
the
good question.
demand is out there, and we don't have ways of trying to deter. I mean, we have people out there trying to deter people from using drugs, but you know that
Yeah,
demand out there, you have more people glorifying it
yeah.
than not. So
Exactly,
especially
exactly,
at a young age, especially
exactly,
we both
exactly.
experienced that.
Oh
Maybe not
yeah,
the hard
oh
stuff.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. That's
it's
why I
out
can
there.
relate to people that dealing with drug problems or alcohol problems. I can relate to the people like that.
Yeah,
You
indeed.
know, but that's what we got to do. We got to stop the demand. You know, that's the big thing.
That's the big thing.
Hmm.
Clarence, again, I thank you. I appreciate you, brother, and continue to do what you do. And we'll continue to communicate between the two of us and keep sharing information to our audiences. And hopefully, we can make this world a better place.
Yeah, we
You
can.
know,
And I got to get you on
yeah,
our show, Slim, real soon.
yeah. Be glad
That
to
means you
do
got to
it. Be
get up
glad to
early
do
in the
it.
morning.
Yeah. Well, I used to do
You
it coming in for the
used to
radio.
do it, right?
Yeah.
Right.
So I can do it. I can do it.
You're
I can
right.
do
Yeah,
it.
you sure did. You used to do it
Yeah.
back in the day. You
Yeah.
know.
But thanks a
Yeah.
lot. We
Oh, you're
appreciate it.
welcome, man.
And
Thanks for having me. I really
thank
appreciate
you.
that, man. And Godspeed with your show.
Yeah, thank you. And I
You're welcome.
want to remind everybody who's watching on our Facebook pages and our YouTube channel. Make sure you like, and especially on the YouTube, make sure you subscribe to the Slim Nation 101's podcast. Trying to build this channel and get the word out as often as we can. Clarence Neely, our guest today. Take care, Clarence.
It's time for us to sit down at the table and turn this chaos into something stable. For love, one on one. We will not accept defeat, not on our land, not in our streets. Getting it done. Reaching out to save the youth, letting them know the truth. Slim Nation is where good conversations dwell.